Well, Damian, thanks for joining me, man. I appreciate it. As I just mentioned previously, I've been stalking you a little bit. You've got a lot going on, man.
Yeah, it's been a crazy, like 5-year journey. That's for sure.
So let me ask you, I guess, looking at your background, right? Which I didn't know this about you, but you worked with Social Media Examiner, 16 to
I,
18, right?
I did,
And
I did.
then you launched Rootless Living magazine. So I'm always curious, like people like you that kind of venture outside of what you might consider, I don't know, normal is the right word, but you're pretty standard. I've got a job. This is what I'm doing. To making a leap into something, particularly like a print magazine. What I guess what was the thought behind that? And I guess walk me through that journey. Like how does that come about?
Yeah, so I had actually done magazines in the past, print only. I did a skate magazine in the '90s that was, centered around like the Southern California skate scene.
Sweet.
Um, and I did right up until the crash in 2008. I did a local, I wouldn't call it a newspaper because we didn't come out like a traditional newspaper weekly. It was more of a monthly and kind of looked like a magazine, but printed on newsprint. And we did that for like 5 or 6 years, but the majority of my advertisers were, real estate contractors. So 2008, it just, got swallowed up. And I really enjoyed the publishing industry. I had no background in the digital side because in 2008, I think you were still trying to explain people how to attach a photo to an email. So it
Right.
wasn't like people were like reading stuff. I've gone back and forth from owning my own businesses or trying to work with like really like cool people. And I knew that, I mean, just so people know, I became a full-time RVer in 2017. And leading up to that, I kind of said to myself, okay, I need to start my own gig because I need to be able to control my schedule, or I need to work for someone remote that isn't about 9 to 5. And I found that gig working for Social Media Marketing World, which was remote. And I I did kind of have to keep. I told them I was moving to Texas, which was true, but I was going to take about a year between leaving California to buying property in Texas to kind of travel. But as a salary commission salesperson, I didn't think it remote anyways. They're based in San Diego, and I was living in Los Angeles at the time. It wouldn't matter where I was, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case. A couple of years into it, it became very evident that me traveling and having this video series and stuff was a problem for them, which really sucked because it was like kind of the perfect gig for someone that wants to travel the country.
So what was the problem they had with that?
Um, I honestly, I think it just goes back to like egos and stuff on things, which is weird. Like I had some really like you can look back and say red flag moments in the sense that I guess I was really enjoying life.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that would be hard. I love that everyone that works for me now is enjoying life. And I was not necessarily getting famous for my road series, but definitely within a very small circle, which was around the circle I was working for. And it was actually really helping me with my job too, which was weird. And I think ultimately, as I've seen other people leave their companies and this company, and it's probably why I've put into play with my company is that I want people to have something else outside of the basket of working for me, where a lot of companies don't like that. And I actually really like that for two reasons. One is then someone doesn't feel trapped working for me. So if they ever get to a point where they're like, I really don't like working for Damien, they don't stay just because they need the money. And I think you get a better employee too when they have maybe working for me isn't their passion project, but if they still have their passion project, then there's a good balance there. And I think that was it because it didn't make sense to me, the people I worked with. I mean, I didn't have a salary or a sales goal for the first 2 years, and all of a sudden I got one, and I had like 30 days to complete it, and I wasn't able to complete it, and they let me go, which made no sense. I had no issues, no problems, no write-ups, nothing before, but just those last 30 days. And I think that's when I really made the stance where no matter how cool I think someone is or how great of a company is, I just have to work for myself. I have to control or at least have the ability to have that side hustle or side project that if someone lets me go, it doesn't send me and my life spinning. And and that's just been kind of my motto. But then I decided you know what? I'm going to get back in the magazine business. But as a side note, in 2016, when I was researching going full time to live in an RV and travel the country for a year, I immediately found, I thought I invented it. Like I didn't know anybody that was doing it. You know what I mean? Like I always
Yeah.
make that joke. And instantly I found out I did not invent it. People have been doing it for decades and people were making content about it. And I was very surprised there wasn't a publication about it because it was such a, it's very much a niche, but it's still a large enough niche. And I put that little feather in the cap even back in 2016. And I didn't announce Rootless Living until 2019. And then full disclosure, when I got let go in late of 2018, until literally a year later, I just sat around like in a little bit of a stupor. Like, I can't believe I'm 40, what was I at the time? Maybe 40, 48. I've been let go again. I'm out here on the road. It just really kind of messed with my head. And the fun thing, just a weird side note, is that the stuff they wouldn't let me do at my old job, starting a podcast, starting like a lot of this relationship business, like not just going out and being like, you got to sign a contract with me, but really starting relationships and, getting me that, like that jab, like right hook kind of Gary
Mhm.
Vaynerchuk style of stuff. It's my businesses have blown up because of the things that I wanted to do with them that they didn't let me, that made me feel like, man, I'm just not good at what I do, to now being able to do all those things the last couple of years and just killing it, where I'm like, okay, I do know what I'm doing. It's been a really cool. So if anyone's listening and your boss isn't letting you do that, would work, and then it's not, your stuff's not working because they're not letting you do what would work, it's not you, it's them. And maybe go somewhere else where you can do what would work, kind of a thing. So
Yeah, it's really interesting because I feel like there's been a slow shift to that, but there's like this need that the traditional businesses, which, I think most of them fall under that in terms of their mentality.
mm,
Like there's this need to feel in control. And I think these management or owners, like if they don't know what you're doing every hour of every day, they go into paranoia mode. It's like, it's very bizarre, the way that work has changed. I mean, you're doing it obviously clearly as a business, but with people working remote and efficiencies, very few companies have I seen. There are a couple out there. I track friends of mine on LinkedIn, but that encourage employees to do that, right? To exactly
right.
what you're explaining, and it does. It makes it makes life more worthwhile, which I guess rootless living is really kind of all about.
Yeah, I think the hard thing for me, where it's just like it's a shame, is that they, like, it was tough. They wanted me to work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and then I was always like 9 to 5 where? I'm in different time zones every 2 months,
Right.
and they're just like, whatever your local time zone is. I was like, okay, this really is stupid. But with my own business, there's times like at 10 o'clock at night, I'm like, what, I'm going to do some cold emailing, and I'll write all these emails, and then I'll just schedule them for the next thing in the morning. I'm not going to email someone at 10:30 at night. um, and I was just like, I'm doing the things I wanted to do for them that then allow me on a Thursday to move from one campground to another, which is a much better day to move an RV than, let's say, a Saturday. I'm still putting in my 40 hours. I'm just doing it at different times, and at times where I'm more inspired. I mean, I think that's the thing I've been realizing just myself, is I'm not always that inspired between 9 to 5.
Yeah,
You
I'm
know,
not either.
I'm
Yeah.
I, yeah, I'm inspired between 5 p.m. to 2 in the morning a lot of times, and it's like, if I'm a salary commissioned person that's not customer facing, it doesn't need to be there if someone dings the door. Why do you care when I work? I've never understood that. As long as I'm, and I don't, I have employees that'll, well, they're contractors, but they'll email and say, hey, I'm going to be out of range of the next 2 days, and I'm like, I don't care.
Right.
Like, I literally have to, like, they come, it's so funny. I've had these conversations where people are coming in with these excuses or things. And I'm like, that's the old corporate America that you're dealing with, PTSD. You just need to say, Damian, I'm not going to be available Thursday, Friday. That's it.
Right.
That's all you have to say. I don't need the reason. I don't need the family. I don't need the wedding. If your reason is, I don't feel like working Thursday and Friday, I don't care, because I know over the weekend or Monday, Tuesday, you'll double up and you'll get it done. I
Right.
don't care. And it's really hard for them. I always have to remind them. I do the same thing with my kids. When my kids want to borrow money, I don't care what the reason is. Like, don't sell me a story, because I felt like I had to do that with my parents, where I had to, like, yes, I was wearing brand new Jordans and now I need to borrow money. Clearly there was bad money management, but just text me or email me and say, Dad, I need to borrow $500 for a week. I'll pay you back. And boom, don't give me the excuses and reasons, because one, you might be making them up in line. Two, you feel like if I say no because I don't have the money, maybe you think I'm saying no because of your reason. So just ask for the money. Same thing with this. I just don't know why we don't do it. Weird rant, but I don't know why we don't do it.
No, that's funny, man. Yeah, the other thing too, I think the way that you were approaching it, even early on, it sounds like with social media world, et cetera, that type of person is so valuable. We've come to find that out, right? The content creators that are comfortable doing that type of stuff on an ongoing basis, like that's a rare breed. And I think
Right.
whenever companies have people that are willing and able to go out there, you hired them, right? So that they should be representative of the type of person that matches your culture. So even if their content is not exactly about your business or what you're doing, the fact that you get that added benefit of exposure and people say, hey, where do you work? What do you do? Oh, that seems cool. Like, I mean, if I was hiring two people and one had a side hustle or was comfortable creating content, I mean, no questions asked. Like, it's a no-brainer. But the way that that's often done, and you kind of hit the nail on the head a moment ago, like there's this PTSD where then, these creators, they're not creating because they're afraid to create, because what if such and such sees me doing this? It's a
Right.
strange cycle. It's a strange cycle when you have, particularly people in our age demographic, right? I think I might even be a little older than you. I'm 47.
I'm
But
51, brother.
oh, okay. So yeah, we're right there. And it's like, it drives me crazy. Maybe that's not the right way to say it, but people in our demographic, maybe even, a little bit younger, called 35 and up, like that have a certain level of experience that really cannot be duplicated anymore. If you come from the world of no cell phones and,
Right.
very little internet, there's like an experience that kind of catching that wave and actually riding it as a content creator or whatever, that I think is so valuable, because you have these kind of ingrained habits of doing business and building relationships when it was really hard to do, and
Right.
now apply it to a digital world. I just think it's a huge miss for companies that have expertise internally that they just don't let it out of the box, for whatever reason. It's just
Well, they
very
can't,
interesting.
like you said, what you said, they can't control it. Like, I'll give you an example. So here I am working for, if you guys don't know what social media marketing world, it's an event that happens once a year in San Diego where people that want to understand, marketing through social media go and attend and go to this
It's
conference.
huge.
And my job, it is, I mean, the last year before COVID was like 5,000. I think they finally had another one. It was like 2,000 in person. They were really, really growing. And my job was to sell the sponsors. So the exhibitors and like sponsors. And I was having a really hard time breaking through, especially because I'm selling something that's analog to digital companies. Going to a conference and taking out a booth or a page in a program, that's been going on for 100 years. So I'm selling
Right.
something that's analog to digital mindsets. And it was really hard to break through who the people were. And I came to my boss and I was like, I want to do a podcast called Digital Now. So like people, places, and things. And I just want to interview these companies. And she was like, oh, I don't know. And I said, look, she was like, I don't know if you get a lot of listeners. And it made me laugh. I'm like, I'm not trying to get listeners. I'm trying to send an email that says, I want you on my podcast so we can get to know each other. And I did a test of 25 emails, 22 got responded to, and 18 booked a showtime.
Isn't that
I
crazy?
then sent 25 cold emails. I got zero response in regards to exhibiting. In the test, I recorded 3 test shows before I went to her. In the 3 test shows, at the end, I let the recording, all 3 said, hey, Demian, tell me about social media marketing world.
Right. And that's
And they
something.
still didn't want to do it. And that's why I was just like, okay, they're not in there because they can't control it. Like it would
Right.
be Damien's. I even said it won't say like digital nouns by Social Media Examiner or Social Media Marketing World. It'll be digital nouns with Demian Ross. It's like my own little like
Right.
so I work for Social Media Examiner. I'll definitely say that. I work for Social Media Marketing World, but I'm not going to tie it together kind of a thing. And I think about a year later they did try it, which is funny too. You know what I mean? Where
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like now that they can be their idea because the guy that came up with it's no longer there and no one will know it. And they
Right.
tried to do like a tech dad something Tuesday, and that was the way that hopefully they were starting these conversations because that's what people need to look at. I mean, I mean, I say that, but then I'm also very anti where the magazine industry is going, because the magazine industry is kind of going into this like guerrilla marketing. Most magazines aren't magazines anymore. They're just
Right.
guerrilla marketing. And that part is like cringy to me. I don't mind it as much for podcasts, because I think podcasts are new and you can decide what it is. But I think magazines have decided what they were 100 years ago, and very traditional kind of journalism. So I think it's a weird that magazines are going that route.
Yeah, what when you decided to kind of launch Rootless Living and now you're doing RV today,
Mm.
like what the timing of it all? I mean, you ran right up into COVID with this.
Yeah, I launched in January and COVID was, I guess full blown depending where you are in the world. Some places, some places April, some places, not until January the next year. But yeah, it was a good thing and a bad thing from a readership standpoint. And at the time, we were free digital and like $50 a year print.
Yep.
The digital just boomed because I think this lifestyle idea boomed. And the reason I really launched it is because I'm definitely not a boomer, but I've got some boomer tendencies. I mean,
Mhm.
if you get on my yard, I'm going to yell to get off my lawn. But other than that, my other one is, I think the one thing I don't like about content creators, or the yucky word influencers, is people get really drawn into one person's point of view. And what I really wanted to do was create a magazine that's not about Damien. I really have very little of me in there. I think I have a from the founders page, but that's really it. I've written very few articles. It's really me just finding digital nomads that can write for digital nomads. So you get everyone's perspective, because I also saw that the industry was really lacking in having people outside of what looked like me, a 50 something white male.
Mhm.
And, but I think it's important to get, because even really popular channels, like a lot of them have kids, and I'm like, my kids are all adults. I can't really relate to wanting to travel with kids. Um, but I understand that for some people, we want to have that content because that's what people need. And I think that was the real genesis of Rootless Living, was just bringing these content creators together. And I also knew, and I haven't really even launched with it, um, a lot of content creators, especially in the RV space, when they're first starting out, they're like reaching out to campgrounds for like free stays, or for companies for products, free products. And when you're starting out and you have very little views, it's hard to really get someone excited. And but if you say that you're a part of with a magazine, and they'll do a write up and it'll be in a magazine, um, that instantly gives you kind of credit. So it's kind of a fun way to help some of these content creators. Because if you've been to a restaurant, you've seen someone print out a blog post or a YouTube screen cap and frame it and put it in their business. Let me know. But I've seen a ton of businesses that have magazines and newspaper cutouts and frames and in their lobbies and storefronts. And I think that mentality is still there with magazines. It's like, once you're in a magazine, you're legit. But just because you're on someone's blog post, or even podcasts, which I have a podcast, so I'm shaming myself, but there's something different about being in print that people, as owners and businesses, get really excited about letting people know that they're in print.
Yeah, yeah, and I think there's something that just kind of transcends, whatever you want to call it, when it comes to a tangible item, right? I think the same way about just traditional direct mail. It's like
Hmm.
when it's done well, of course, but it's the
100%.
fact that there was a certain level of consideration, time, energy, and risk that goes into that. There's just something that makes it more real than
Right.
getting, something digitally. Boop, here's an email, or here's a message, where that's 3 seconds sent to 60 million people. It's like there's something about holding a book or a magazine or getting something that makes a brand and the people behind it, just there's an authenticity, something that makes it real at that point.
I think it's also that there's the idea that there's an investment. Like I battle the idea. Originally, Rootless Living was going to be only digital, if I'm really honest.
Hmm.
I didn't see the need to do it in print, especially in the first year. We were going to do digital the first year and then look at bringing print on. But immediately when we announced it in November of 2019, people were like, "Oh, damn, is it going to be available in print?" I still was getting my magazines in print, so I understood it was possible for a digital nomad to get your magazines in print, especially if it was an evergreen publication. And we did a Kickstarter, and I was like, okay, here's what we need. Let's double that. And if we get it, then we'll do it this year. And we did hit it. We hit the goal pretty quickly too. I was really surprised that especially again, remember the audience, digital nomads, people
Mhm.
traveling while working, that they would still want it in print. But I also was, and the reason I bring this up is when I was thinking about being digital only, I wasn't going to call myself a magazine because we weren't in print. I don't know if I would use a term like e-zine or make up something kind of cool, but I am, again, my boomer tendencies, that is, if it's not available in print, it's not a magazine. And I know for a lot of people that's, if I tell someone I've read a book and I've listened to it on Audible, I'll tell them I've listened to a book. I'm just that way, where I
Yeah.
don't consider it that I read the book. It's a little different. And I remember thinking through the marketing and strategy of like, I want to make sure it's well known that this is digital only, even though I was going to print some to mail to potential advertisers. Because again, I think, like to your point where you're just saying, when you're holding it, it gives it, because I've had that conversation already so many times where I hand someone a magazine, they're like, "Oh, it's a real magazine." I'm like, "Yeah, what did you think it was?" And it's because there have been a lot of bloggers that have decided to take their blog and transfer it into a
Right.
PDF and call it a magazine.
Right.
And it's not, that's not a magazine, and for some it is, and I get it. And I know it's my little sticker point, but I think a magazine, to be a magazine, needs to be available in print, and it probably needs to be at least 6 times a year to be what I would consider. And there's other terms for those, and we have them. Nobody calls their podcast a radio station or a radio
Mhm.
show. They call it a podcast. Nobody calls their YouTube channel a TV show.
Mhm.
And it's like, why not? Why do we call these e-zines? We have a term for it, e-zine. Why are we calling it a magazine when it's an e-zine? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Now, did you already have like partners lined up? Like, because you obviously you had a background in it. So, I mean, launching a magazine for you, was it basically just tapping into your existing resources and go? I mean, what did that look like?
Yeah. So, Rootless Living, I immediately thought, okay, that's how I'll fund it, is through advertisers. But I knew I had to grow the circulation, which I actually think is a real misstep. If someone's listening that's really wanting to launch a magazine, but the way I launched RV Today has been completely different, and it's been a lot more successful financially from the get go. And
Why
that
is that a
launched
misstep?
January. Well, because I think, there is a lot of free stuff out there already, YouTube and blogs and things of that nature. So you're adding a value to it as being free. So it's free content, and that's the value of the content.
Got it.
And I think what I should have done was at least let people see that there is a price point. You can kind of come in early, or maybe like instead of 1 year, you could buy 3 years. Because what I basically did was it's free for the first 18 issues, which Rootless was running 6 times a year. So that would be 3 years. But I
Hmm.
should have had a value to it from the get go, or worked partnerships like with this promo code, it could be free. And it's almost like, because, you're a Grand Design RV owner, they're sending you this promo code and it's free. And then after 3 years, we'll send you an email to see if you want to re up, no credit card kind of a thing. I didn't do that with RV Today. RV Today was, you had to pay for it from the get go. And in the first 40 to 5 days of RV Today, I did more revenue from a bringing in digital subscribers and print subscribers than I did the first almost 18 months of Rootless Living.
Oh, wow.
And what's so funny too is that when RV Today, the launch, was doing so well, I almost thought about not doing advertisers for the first year in RV Today.
Wow, really?
And the reason why, and again, if you're out there listening, you're thinking about starting a magazine, when I was reaching out to people for Rootless Living in January of 2020, so we had just launched, I put one issue out. Um, I think most of the advertisers were people that were very interested, weren't committed yet, or I had some sort of partnership with, and a couple that had paid. But I basically was saying, "Hey, I've got 2,500 subscribers," and that first issue that went to 2,500 email addresses, or I mailed to because they bought the print, has now been read over 50,000 times.
Wow.
And I didn't realize it because I'd never done digital. I didn't realize that people would go, because case study of one, when I subscribe to a magazine, I never look at the back issues. I never want to buy the back print issues. I'm subscribing moving forward. And that's something that was really crazy with Rootless Living, is that issues 1 through 4, I had to print 3 different times because people were purchasing the print back issues, which
Wow.
my mind was blown. Where people were literally sending me, I was selling them for like $15 an issue, back issues, single copy issues. They would buy all 4, so that's $60 plus a year of 6 issues for $50. I was getting a charge for $110 for like 10 magazines. And I just was like, what is going on? This is crazy. And yeah, I had to actually take back issues off the website for a while just because we were traveling so much. It's just hard to do, keep inventory and drive around in an RV. But now that we're building a shop and stuff, I went ahead and put them back on, and they're selling like fireworks again. I never thought people would be interested. And that's why you should never do case studies of one. Just because you don't like something doesn't mean others won't. And people really do like, and especially if your content's evergreen. I mean, I have people that are still buying issue one of, oh no, I think we finally sold out of issue one of 2020. But there were people up until, just recently that were still buying an issue that's over 2.5 years old.
Wow. That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
So without going into detail, I'm not going to have you break it all down, but I'm just curious myself. Like, you embarked on this, what started off as a 300 video kind of mission, and you moved it to 1,000. I mean, you don't have to go into the whole thing. I know you're reconsidering what you're going to do with that, but I'm just curious, like, why you did that.
So, yeah, I had this video series called The Road to 300, and I knew that it would be a little bit of a Trojan horse for the company I was working at. And actually, a fun fact, I knew secretly that if I did a video every day for 365 days in a row, day 365 would have been the first day of social media marketing world 2019. And
That's
it just would have
awesome.
been interesting to be there in San Diego and have done, a video every day for a year. But honestly, the real genesis was I had no creative outlet for the job I was working
Hmm.
in. They literally wanted me to stay in LinkedIn, Salesforce, and emails. There was nothing creative they wanted me to do. They honestly didn't even like it when people are interested in like, hey, Damian, where are you now? Because I didn't realize that just me starting my, emails, hey, greetings from Texas, hey, greetings from Mississippi, greetings from Arizona, that I would get people to literally respond and say, hey, you know what, I'm not interested in, you know, sponsoring your event, but how come you're always in different states? Like that kind of a thing. Um,
That's awesome.
and so I wanted something that was a little consistent too. There wasn't really, I was a single dad that raised 4 kids by myself. I took 4 kids to 4 different schools. My
Wow.
life was very disciplined, and there was just a lot of consistency. And now that I was this digital nomad that was kind of traveling, and I just needed something. And I will tell you that, doing a daily video, talking head kind of on a tripod and just your thoughts isn't a way to grow a YouTube channel by any means, but it is a really good, consistent project. And I got through 300 days, and the idea was to do 300 videos in a year. So I gave myself, like 65-day buffer in case, whatever, you get sick, internet's bad. But I hit 300 and 300. And I knew I was just going to be like, oh, I'll just add the 65 and just do a year and be done with it. And then I had this crazy idea of, you know what, I'll do it for 1,000 days in a row. And every day I recorded and published, mostly either day of or the day before. There wasn't a lot in the can unless I
Hmm.
really knew I was going to be traveling a lot or bad internet. But I never missed a day. I did all 1,000. And it just really led me to other things where when I had buddies that were in the content creating space that were like, you'll never get to 100. Like they just like everyone gives up. People do this thing. I think it's like, Christmas vlog or
Right.
vlogmas or something, where it's like they try to do every day in December or something to kind of kick off the new year. Most people, I'd say like 95% give up after 6 or 7. And it's the same with podcasts. Most people give up after 7 episodes of their podcast. They think they're going to get a million, subs and listeners in the first 7 days. So they give up. But it's just a great project that, I can look back on, and it's fun to just see where I'm at. It was kind of an interesting way of kind of, keeping a little bit of a digital diary of this trip. Because originally when I was leaving in 2017, I was one of those kind of content creator douchebags that was like, hey, I'm buying an RV and I've got a camera. You should give me, a truck for free, and and I really didn't vlog. Like I started getting worried that, oh, maybe they would, not like it. Again, the people I'm working for. So, but the roads, here's the crazy thing about the road series and kind of all this stuff is the road series. I started getting asked to speak at events
Hmm.
that my potential sponsors were at. So and understand that you might be thinking, oh, that's cool, you got to get in front of them. No, what I got was I got a speaker badge, and I could go through the exhibit hall and go up to a booth, and instead of it saying media, it said speaker. And these people just treat you different, talk to you differently. And then I could be like, oh, but I also got to know the events that I was going to, whether it was Content Marketing World or Social Media Week Lima or whatever, that they knew that they were booking a guy that worked for Social Media Marketing World. Clearly, he's going to talk about that. And I even had a great line at Social Media Week Lima where I said, if you're going to go to one event, you should always come to Social Media Week Lima. It's like really important for you to stay local. But if you're going to go to two events, you should come to Social Media Marketing World in San Diego. And I even got to do like a pitch, and it was fine. But I think that the people that were running Social Media Week Lima were like, it was really great that you said, make sure to stay local first, but then go to a big event. And that's really true to me. I believe that. I don't think you should join the National Chamber of Commerce first, like join your local one and do stuff local first. But that series really did. I started getting invited to things. I started getting people, hey, can we send you products? It was very weird. It started opening the doors where I was like, okay, even though I'm not creating content that's viral or one that really will bring a bunch of subscribers. I mean, full disclosure, I think I ended the series with 1,000 subscribers. It was really, and I started with maybe like 20. It was nothing. And originally I was putting most of the videos like on Instagram and Facebook. I was trying to keep the videos under a minute. And then I just went full into where I have some videos that are like 5-8 minutes long. And some are traditional kind of blogs where it's like me really out, multiple cuts, B-roll, music, but most is just me a talking head and just giving my opinion about something. But it really did open doors. It was a good side hustle. And I could see myself being able to, if I wanted to pivot and monetize it, I probably could have 100%. And I mean, it was crazy that I was getting invited to places to speak before I even hit 100. I did something called the Road to Social, where I spoke at an event in Wichita, Lima, and Denver. And there was a bunch of us that got in a van and drove. We did this like road trip to these three that happened to be like within a 10-day span of each other. And I hit 100 days, I think, somewhere on that trip. So it wasn't like I was in, day 800 before people started reaching out and wanting, for me to talk about it, which I thought this is crazy. Like, you really can get out there early and do well.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that and when I see stuff like what you've done, as a creator and as a creative myself, it's inspiring, and I think there's a couple things that happens there. Like, that people do get caught up in the metrics, right? They want that to be their bread and butter, and they want all these revenue ideas, but they fail to consider the evergreen nature of just your thoughts, your life, your personality, living out there, for anybody that encounters you to kind of discover. Like, before I got you on this call, like, I feel like I told you before we started talking, I felt like I knew you, because you get to see that. And there's just so many opportunities come up when you're authentic and you're not trying to over produce anything. I just think it's so underrated. And I think what you did, for the people that are thinking of creating content, want to create content, whatever the case may be, I see things like that. And it's inspiring. Like, I'll bet there's a lot of people out there that have done their road to whatever because they saw what you've done. And so it's one of those things where I see that and I'm always fascinated, like, man, why did you decide to do that? And when I see it unfold the way that it has, even if you stop those roads too now, I think it's man, it's been a really cool thing to watch.
Yeah, and I don't think there would be a Rootless Living without the Road series, because that's where I was able to launch the Kickstarter, was through that video series where, and again, remember, I mean, at the time I had less than 1,000, but I was able, between my own personal socials and that, say, hey, I'm launching this magazine about full-time digital nomad. And I built relationships with other RV content creators in the space, some really big ones, and it really helped launch it because of those video relationships. But to your point, and I've seen it happen. I mean, my background, my parents are in television. My mom produced the Tonight Show from Johnny
Wow.
Carson to Jay Leno. So I had
Holy
been
cow, really?
around.
That's a whole different
Yeah, and I've been
topic, but
around
that's
those.
amazing.
Yeah, I've been around celebrities to the point where I see how people see them and think they know them.
Yeah.
And because of that and how weird that is. But it's the same thing where I'm on the same side of that too, where I've, watch other content creators, and let's say, I meet them at an RV park. We both already feel like we know each other, and maybe they haven't consumed my content as much as I have them, but they've consumed some. And there's already a little like, I know your personality, I know what you look like.
Right.
And I agree that there's that. Then you can't put a return on investment on that kind of stuff. And I think that it really goes back to kind of like a lot of what, Gary Vaynerchuk's talked about, which I think is really important, is that you do need to build your personal brand, no matter whether you work for yourself or you work for someone else. And at the end of not necessarily have to be an influencer, but just that you have a brand that's authentic to who you are and it's out there. And I think it's my biggest advice to people is, even my kids, is create content that you're going to want to look back on and see, but then maybe your kids will. And I'm not encouraging my kids to have kids, but I tell them that because I would give, I can't say what I'd give away on everything, but I would give something that you wouldn't give away that uses the term, the left one. I would give away the left one, to watch video of my parents or my grandparents in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And just to see, just what their lifestyle was like, their everyday life, and get to know them. All my grandparents aren't with me anymore. I would kill for those videos. And that's part of the legacy of it, is that my family will always have these videos of me if they ever want to. And my kids do. My kids do watch it. They haven't watched all 1,000, that's for sure. But they would reach out and say, "Oh, that was cool, Dad. I saw this video you did about this." And I was always really interested that they were staying connected with me, even though I was on the road.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Man, I love what you're doing so much, man. Gosh, it'll be fun to watch you as you continue to grow this. Um, I just love it when people kind of embark on something like you have, and they put everything into it. By the way, awesome new studio. I saw that video. Wow, that's pretty slick. That RV, the
Yeah, the RV's
renovation.
cool. Yeah, we have so I mean, I'm still definitely a digital nomad, but I did purchase 240 acres here in Oklahoma. Um, I was right before this call, I was meeting with my builders and stuff. We're building a 30 by 30 office with a 50 by 80 shop that we will be renovating. Some RVs. We'll put some spots for, friends that we've made along the way to come and stay on the property. But allow us to have a little bit of a home base to offload some of this, really work maybe like 2, 3 months like hardcore, and then get on the road for a while, come back, work. I really do believe everyone should full-time RV travel for whatever time frame you can. I would say at least a year in your life, hopefully in your early part of your life, your 20s and 30s. But definitely no matter when, do it. But I think the hybrid life for me is where, having a home base, but being able to be wheels up, not some weird prepper way, but where I can be wheels up in like 30 minutes. And because honestly, I had to fly to Vegas in November for an RV show, and it took me 18 hours to go from Tulsa to Vegas via
Whoa,
flight. I could have drove there, I don't know what, in 8 hours, and then,
holy
not had to
cow!
check into a hotel. Yeah. So it was like, and my business partner just went to Oregon recently. She's in Oregon right now. And it was a whole nightmare for her to get there. And there was a whole nightmare with the car rental, and it was just like this, I'd much rather just be in a van or an RV and control it myself. So the hybrid will be there. But what's interesting too, I want to make sure, because I kind of talked about it, and because I want people to kind of hear it. The genesis of RV today, because Rootless Living, there was no full-time RVer publication. There was no digital nomad. But RV today, there are a lot of RV publications. But I'll tell you this, is I'm the only RV magazine that is actually just a magazine. Like, our income is subscribers and advertisers. There's no other Trojan horse with it. Every other magazine is owned by a dealership, an agency, an association, a membership, an organization. A lot of them, the main company started first, the magazine came after, um, which is fine. I mean, Sears and Victoria's Secret did this, but they didn't call them magazines, they called them catalogs.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's where, especially in this industry, and I'll give you an example, and I want to be careful, not to say the actual title just so I don't get sued, but the title was doing a generator comparison. And in the RV, if you're an RV and you're listening right now, you probably know about the Harbor Freight Predator 3500 generator. It is one of the most affordable and really the most quiet and long running generators there are. I love it. They're not an advertiser, they're not a partner of mine, but I will tell you about them all the time. This magazine did not list them in their generator comparison because they don't sell it.
Hmm.
That's not a magazine. That's not journalism. That's a catalog. And that literally was the genesis where I said, that's it. I'm going to start an RV magazine for RVers by RVers. And when I started to really, deep dive, I was blown away because there's been a couple magazines that have come up. And again, I'm talking print and digital. There's a ton of digital only kind of zines that are out there right now. But I'm just, when it comes to print and digital, there's like 6 or 7, and all of them are owned by some other entity and used as guerrilla marketing. And even to the point where I've had a couple of these other magazines reach out to me to want to advertise, pay me to advertise. And I would say instead, why don't we work a relationship where you can advertise your association, because that's what you're selling, and I'll advertise my magazine to your members. And they're like, no, that's a conflict of interest.
Hmm.
And I'm like, wait, so you can advertise in my magazine and that's not a conflict, but if I advertise in yours, it is? And they're like, yes. And I was like, okay, then let's just not do business. I don't want your money. That makes no sense. You're not. And I would even tell them, you're not a magazine, you're a newsletter. When I worked at a chamber of commerce, we had a newsletter. We didn't call it a magazine. It's a newsletter. It's just all about the members. That's not journalism. And I know it's a weird rant, but it's one that I will stand on my soapbox and talk about. That stop calling it a magazine when all you're doing is trying to drive people to all your different services, to your dealership, to your campground, whatever it is. It's just a Trojan horse. And it's really hurting the magazine industry as a whole, I think, because people are just grabbing onto these magazines as, guerrilla marketing. It's not just be a magazine. It's a great business. There's no reason. Just advertise in established magazines, but just do your business. Don't try to start a magazine to be able to advertise your business.
Yeah, and that's interesting you said that. I mean, a good rant, by the way, because it's deserved. I mean, I think you see a lot of that now, and you call it Trojan horse. I've never really heard it described as that, but where I just feel like there's these big brands, and it's almost like, how do we the level of authenticity is faked, and it doesn't take long for people to sniff that out anymore. Everything's clickbaity, or you're getting something in the mail that might look like, beneficial information, but you realize very quickly what the game is. And I
Yep.
think, the challenge for people like you and smaller creators, publications, whatever, is, you are fighting against these people that have budgets that can, drown a market out and say, hey, look at our magazine, even though, to your point, it's probably a newsletter or a catalog at best. So, but the good thing you have is, it's one of those things where you see it all the time. It's just a numbers game, and you hit a tipping point of people that understand, okay, this is the authentic kind of voice of our industry, and it's trusted. And then it's almost impossible for those other entities to break into that, because you've established, we are the voice, and then, they smell out the Trojan horses as they come.
Mhm. No, I agree. And what's funny is I do wish I had the outlet that I have. I wish I was able to buy in somewhere else. As an example, I know what my Facebook, Instagram, YouTube ads, well, I'm not running YouTube right now, but I have in the past for people. I know what those are producing, but I also can look at the analytics of my current advertisers. I wish I could get the audience I need in front of my magazine. You know what I mean? Like if I
Mhm.
wanted to launch something like I don't know, an RV related brand, I'm really excited that I have my magazine, because right now trying to get the word out about the magazine through these digital channels is really expensive and tough. And I look at the CPM that people can pay to get in front of people that are paying, they are paying me to get this content. And then on top of that, I can advertise them. And so the thing that I'm battling with, and I don't know if other publishers that are listening are battling with, is the influencer market is weird for me. I mean, I have a lot of people that are in the space and I love them, but it's just one of those weird things where it's like their entire relationships are all free.
Mhm.
And is 100,000 free? What does that equal into paid subscribers? So if you have
Right.
a YouTube channel that has 100,000 free that gets 15,000 views, and they're CPMing you at the 100,000 subscriber rate, but I have, let's say over here, I have 10,000 that have given me, on average $15 a year. What's a more powerful audience to get in front of? What would you rather, if you had to pay the same amount of money, what would you rather pay? And I think for some reason there's still, because everyone's so like excited about digital, they'd be like, oh, I'd go with the YouTuber. And, which it's weird because I have a podcast. I've never ran ads on it because, again, case study one, you throw an ad on a podcast, skip. You throw
Hmm.
an ad on YouTube, skip. You put an ad in a magazine, it's part of the experience.
Hmm.
I'm still reading it. And if your ad's good enough, maybe I don't know that I'm actually seeing an ad. Maybe it's, it's not so obvious. There's not a giant QR code on it that, I have to scan or something that I'm like, oh, okay, you made a good impression on me. And I flip to the next. Also, real quick, publishers, stop putting QR codes in your digital publications because people are reading it with the device they need to scan with it. And that's some weird sorcery. And I don't know if you have to like get a mirror out and like put the QR code in the mirror and then like I don't know what you're doing. And like I've seen people email me QR codes and I'm like, dude, just put the link. Like stop it. You're overdoing it. And I try to fight against back against QR codes even in print because until I see a QR code on a billboard or on a television ad or something like that, it just there's no reason to do them in print. Stop it.
It's funny.
I got weird
Man,
rants today.
no, I love it, dude. And I appreciate. I could talk to you forever. I appreciate you kind of spending some time here. People that are interested, right? I'll post a bunch of stuff and have links. But where do they start when they want to go down this route of discovering what you're up to and learning more about the magazines?
Yeah, so I mean, if you are interested in, a sometime part-time kind of digital nomad lifestyle where, you own your own job or you're remote or maybe you're publishing magazines, you probably can do that from the road. I would check out Rootless Living. We used to be at Rootless Living Mag on Instagram, and I finally got everything trademarked and fought it and got rid of that poacher. So you can just go to at Rootless Living everywhere or rootlessliving.com and you can find us there for the magazine. We have a great new app experience, which is great. So if you just want to be digital only, you'll download the magazine app and it allows you to read it two ways: traditional flip through kind of PDF magazine, but then you can also switch over to what you'll read like a blog where you're scrolling up and down through the article, which makes the font a little bit bigger. It makes the reading experience a ton more better. And we've actually seen our digital readers are like off the hook now because the experience is so much better than a PDF getting emailed to them. If you're an RV owner or interested in owning an RV, you can go to rvtoday.com. And on Instagram, we're RV Today Mag still, but don't worry, at some point I'll get rid of that squatter. And you can check them out there. And then I'm Demian Ross, spelled funky, Demian Ross. You can check me out on YouTube. You can check out the Road series, and then now I'm, you know, gonna I am gonna start creating a lot more content in and around growing the businesses, both the print side of it. We have a land business that we're launching and getting into like the Airbnb space, probably the RV campground space, definitely into the RV renovation space, and I'll be showcasing a lot of kind of developing those businesses and what that looks like. And at some point we'll have a couple of campsites here on the property in Oklahoma. If you're ever in the great flyover state of Oklahoma, you can stop by and grab a space for a night or two, and enjoy kind of the nomadic lifestyle.
Right on, man. I appreciate it, Damien. It was great talking to you, my friend.
Same, man. I'm glad we got to do this.